Sergeant Major Troxel, Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm Staff Sergeant Redlewski, veteran. I recently sent to you, through the Office of Inspector General of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a petition on behalf of the people of the United States asking for the redress of grievances. And in particular, actually I have sent two now, Sergeant Major. Once I got started, it was hard to stop. Had to do with that the Selective Service System is improperly classifying all registrants as a 1H, which is one of the classification classes that they're allowed to use, but they just give it to everybody. And a 1H means that you're not eligible for 1A, which is unrestricted military training, military service. Well, the short answer all that means, well, then we don't have a well-regulated militia because nobody's eligible for service. They made everybody who went to register incompetent. And in fact, you don't even need to go register anymore. They just do it when you go get a driver's license. The states do it. And it's all done on purpose so they can give everyone this civil defect of being incompetent. So I had sent you a petition on that, and I had also sent the same to Sergeant Major McKenna of the U.S. Northern Command, which is the command that's over all of North America. And if anybody would be in charge of, defending the homeland, it would be people like this, for you civilians. And so, who I am, where's that at? All right, Robert Allen Redlewski. There's my DoD ID number, 1211280006. Why does that mean anything in all this? Beyond the fact that I sent the petitions and doing the research to send the petitions, I have found out that the DoD, which is the Department of Defense, is the fourth estate. We'll get into what that means exactly. We'll read a little definition here, but first I guess I'd like to show you that I didn't say they are. The DoD says they are. Department of Defense. Subject: Senior Executive Services. That'd be the SES. Senior level SSL, Scientific and Professional ST. Categories in the DoD Fourth Estate Administration. DoD Fourth Estate Administration. They didn't say it just once. They say it. They're not hiding it. The DoD says they're the fourth estate. The purpose of the overall instruction is to establish policy, assign responsibilities, delegate authority, provide DoD fourth estate entities with supplemental guidance to the policy, laws, regulations relevant to the administration of blah, 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 blah. This volume establishes the overarching responsibility for all aspects of the administration of the for DoD fourth estate to the Director of Administration and Management, DA&M. I got to remember that for later. I haven't really checked into the Director of Administration and Management, DA&M, yet. But I have done some checking into this idea of the DoD being the fourth estate, and, it's not something that civilians should run from. They should run towards it. And when somebody says, halt, who goes there? Say, well, I'm an American national, right? I'm not your enemy. I'm your advocate. And here's why. So, the term fourth estate or fourth power refers to the press and news media, both in explicit capacity and advocacy and implicit ability to frame political issues. Though it is not formally recognized as part of the political system, it wields significant indirect social influence. Well, that's one way that it's defined, right? But the idea of the fourth estate is the derivation of the term fourth estate arises from traditional European concept of the three estates of the realm: the clergy, the nobility, the commoners. The equivalent term fourth power is somewhat uncommon in English, but is used in many European languages, and it's referring to the separation of powers in the government into the legislature, executive, and judiciary. Well, it don't take much to say, okay, in the United States, then, our three estates are the legislature, executive, and judiciary. So who's the fourth estate? Well, we just saw the DoD says they're the fourth estate. Well, let's continue on and develop this idea of this thing called the fourth estate, because, well, I had heard of the three estates before, and you hear of the shadow government, and give it any term that you want to. Well, those are all things that it isn't. The thing that it is, it's the fourth estate. It's under the DoD, which is the Department of Defense, which has the duty to defend the people of the United States from enemies, foreign and domestic. And I'll show you where it says it in their laws. And this is the thing. We're going to go look at what the DoD said and say, well, you said it, DoD, now do it. And they will. Because it's the military. It's not a bunch of fucking politicians. These people are non-political. They got a name for it. Not political. Not Republican, not Democrat. That stuff does not play in the military. It has a duty. Its duty is to defend the people of the United States. Okay, so a little bit more, a little history of things. So in 1580, Montaigne, I don't know who that is, Montaigne, proposed the government should hold in check a fourth estate of lawyers selling justice to the rich and denying its rightful litigants who do not bribe their way to a verdict. Well, that's what we're dealing with today. There's that style of fourth estate, right? It's run by the lawyers. It's called the bar. He's talking about this in 1580, in France, no less. What is more barbarous than to see a nation where justice is lawfully denied him that hath not wherewithal to pay for it, and that this merchandise hath so great credit that in a political government there should be set up a fourth estate of lawyers, breath sellers, and pettifoggers. Well, I couldn't agree more. But that's what it is like in the world, Sergeant Majors. If you go to court, you ain't going to get any justice because you can't afford to pay for it. You're not in their society, right? That's the way it works. And they take away your civil liberties because, as I showed in the complaints I sent to you, right, that they, by making everybody incompetent to be considered 1A, unrestricted military service, you need to have a administrator. And a gal that I was helping with her foreclosure in Terry Lynn Wilson, in her not deposition, what is it they do? Jeepers. Hang on just a second. She got a transcript of her court case. And in the court case, they said, hang on just a second. Okay, I apologize for that. So in her court case, the clerk, the very first line of the transcript is the clerk asking the judge if the judge needs and it was either the guardianship file. I think that's what they said, the guardianship file. Right? Well, why would, Terry need a guardian? Why would there be some guardian file having anything at all to do with Terry's court case about a foreclosure? Well, it's because they're acting like we had this civil disability, that we were unfit for military duty. So that was the reason for one of my petitions to you. But as you can see, then you fall into this system of everything is run by lawyers, who are the ones that are going to be your administrator because you have a civil defect. And there ain't anything you can do about it because the record shows you have this defect, and until the record's changed, well, you have the defect. And that's how they take your civil liberties away from you, by, putting something in a record that you don't know about and never telling you. And that's what happened to everybody who was registered by the Selective Service System, been given the classification of 1H. And by being a 1H, you can't be a 1A and you can't serve in the military. Now, these records are separate from the records the military has for volunteers, for the DoD. The selective service system isn't in there. So they don't, the right hand doesn't know what left hand is doing. So that's what we're up against. So it goes on then. Early citation, none of our political writers take notice anymore of the three estates, namely the kings, lords, and commons, passing by in silence a very large and powerful body which formed the fourth estate in this community, the mob, the people. That's what he was talking about in 1752, right? This idea of the fourth estate. But in the United States, English, right? So in the United States English, that language, the phrase fourth estate is contrast with fourth branch of government, a term that originated because no direct equivalents to the estates of the realm exist in the United States. The fourth estate is used to emphasize the independence of the press, while the fourth branch suggests the press is not independent of the government. And it looks like the DoD, they're really in charge of the press. The shit that we get on Google or the newspaper and so forth, well, that's all political, propaganda. It's not really the free press, it's propaganda. But you'll see on the stuff that DoD has, they just give you one thing after another, information. Before we go there, hey, freedom is not free. Can you please donate? You could do that by sending a donation to PayPal, Rob Ryder, ROBBRYDER, at AOL.com, or you could mail it to me, Robert Allen Rytlewski, 10955, 14 Mile Road Northeast, Rockford, Michigan, 49341. Or you could use Western Union or Walmart, but make sure you put Robert Allen Rytlewski and use the proper name, or they make it really hard to get your money. If you need to email me, though, for emailing, that would be courtofrecord@AOL.com. If you're leaving me a comment in any other place but my email box, I'm not going to read it. I don't read any comments. And my phone is 616-712-6179. And people say, why don't you read your comments? Well, because people just want you to argue with them. They want to keep you from your mission, which is looking ahead and not arguing with the dude to your left or right. I don't really care. Other people don't agree with me. I'm just stating my opinion. And I'm bitching because I have a right to. And other than that, well, I don't need anybody's permission. Okay, what did I want to go to? Oh, we want to go to Wikipedia. Let's see what Wikipedia had to say about fourth branch government. So this is the fourth branch of government. In politics in the United States, fourth branch of government is an unofficial term referring to groups or institutions perceived variously as influence or acting in the stead of the three branches of the U.S. federal government. And that's because we're under martial law and the Constitution's been suspended. Well, at least the offices have been. I'll show you. I'm not just making this shit up. I'll give you evidence. I'm going to show you that there isn't a Congress. Views as to whether the influence is due or undue and the actions are for the good or ill also vary. Okay, and so we got the thing that they call the press. Everybody wants to say the press is the fourth estate, so I'm not going to argue with it. But you could be the press, right? The press are journalists, and journalists keep journals and diaries. It doesn't have anything with working for a newspaper, right? So that's what I'm doing. This is my journal, my journal or diary of what I've come across in the days since the last time I did a video. So now I'm doing another video, and hey, I'm the press. I'm bringing you the truth. Sergeant Major. Justice Anton Scalia, right? He says that it's the grand jury is the fourth branch of government. Others say it's administrative agencies. And then you got the U.S. intelligence agencies. Well, that's what makes up the DoD. So that's the fourth branch of government. And so why is it that the fourth branch of government And what will we do with them? Well, I had done a couple of videos, or I've done many videos, obviously. My last couple were this idea of we're supposed to be able to petition the government for the redress of grievances in accordance with the First Amendment of the Constitution. And so Court Rule 40 and right to petition the government and take it to the general, as in the general Solicitor General, with the idea of, petitioning the government. Because another thing that Justice Scalia had said is that a lawsuit has never been confirmed by the Supreme Court as being a constitutionally protected petition for redress of grievances. So putting something into a court case as a lawsuit, that's not the petition they're talking about. And so I've been trying these different ways to put petitions into all sorts of places, into appeals courts, because of another thing that I really have time to show all these things I've seen the last couple of weeks. But I had read from Justice Roberts that he said the D.C. Circuit is the court that has jurisdiction over all of the executive agencies of the government. And so it should be someplace you should be able to petition, because these agencies are, infringing on your rights. But, I sent a couple to them and got an answer back. Hey, you don't have a court case here. Anyways, none of these places seem to want to help. So I was continuing on, well, who else can I go take one to? And, that's how I ended up with you, Sergeant Major. And you, Sergeant Major, because of the offices you hold. You're in the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And you're in the U.S. Northern Command, which has command over the United States. And the United States is in a rebellion, and we need the military to come to our aid. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go, and I won't bother you anymore. But let me continue on with what I'm doing. Okay, hang on just a second. Here. All right, so I want to show why, things aren't quite as they seem. So there's the United States Code, right? It's supposed to be the Code of Laws of the United States, And some are considered positive law, and other ones aren't positive law. So instead of it being the law, it's just a grouping of the statutes that are the law. Without getting too deep into it, that means then that, let me save this real quick, yes, that Title II, which is the Congress, is not positive law, but it is a grouping hang on here. Jeepers. Okay, so Title II Congress, right? And it has all these different sections in here that, we're just going to look at a couple. We don't need them all to start with to prove our point, right? So, but the first one, so Title II, United States Code, subsection 1, time for election of senators. 1A is election to be certified by governor. It shall be the duty of the executive of the state for which the senator has been chosen to certify his election under the seal of the state to the President of the Senate of the United States. And that's an RS 18, which comes out of 14 Stat 244. And then countersigned by the Secretary of State. Now, if you were to look at these certificates of election that they bring to the President of the Senate, you would see that the names that were used were not the individual's full legal names. Right? They're like nicknames, like Robert A. Rytlewski instead of Robert Allen Rytlewski. Right? Now, everybody has a full legal name. You may use other names to identify yourself, but in legal matters, you're supposed to use your legal name. If you don't, well, then you're not talking about you. And if they don't, they're not talking about you. Well, they don't use their full legal name in court, and they don't use your full legal name in court. They may use the full legal name of your property, your artificial person, right? All caps, but not you as a living man. Because they don't want you to be found in the United States, or they'd have to, they could administer your property for you. Okay, so I just want to show that this is the first thing you could look at. You could go and ask at the Senate, the President of the Senate, the Sergeant Major, you could go ask the President of the Senate, say, I'd like to see those certificates of election. And when you look at them, you'll see that the person that was elected isn't using his full legal name, the governor isn't using his or her full legal name, and neither is the Secretary of State. I've done many videos on this. I'm quite sure that that's the way it is. But now let's get to the oaths of senators, right? The oath of office shall be administered by the President of the Senate to each senator who shall be elected previously to his taking his seat. Previous to his taking his seat. So he can't do any of the duties of the senator until he's done this. And what does it say to do? It says this section came out of this law, which is 1 Stat 23. It's not the 5 U.S.C. 3331 that they take, which we'll look at in a second. No, they're supposed to use the one from 1 Stat 23, which is the oath of office that was passed by the very first Congress, an act to regulate the time and manner of administering certain oaths, where it said, be it enacted by the Senate and representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. I wonder why they put House in a bracket. I don't really know what that's for, but, you know, it's there for a reason. That the oath or affirmation required by the 6th article of the Constitution, and the 6th article requires everybody to take an oath to support the Constitution and to have no legal or have no religious test. All right, shall be administered in the form following, to wit, I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, period. That's the oath they have to take. Not anything else, not anything less. They may have to take another oath, but this is the oath they need to take to satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution. Now, this applies not only to the members of Congress, but if you read the law, it applies to, well, everybody. Right? Judicial officers, executive officers, legislatures of the states, Everybody has to take this oath of office. It's found in 1 Stat 23. Specifically, senators have to take it because there it is. Well, that's not the oath of office they're taking. Okay, well, that was them. Now, how about the oath of the speakers, members, and delegates? Well, there you go. Now, theirs is blah, 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 blah. And then they got RS 30 with the colon or semicolon, and then another thing, which is 62 Stat 20, which isn't, you know, so these are two different oaths. This is my point. This is showing they got to take two different oaths because there's two different entities added. And RS 30 is derived from the Act of June 1st, 1789. Hey, that'd be 1 Stat 23. But this isn't the oath that they're taking. By they, I mean the House of Representatives, which here's an example, right? This is out of the congressional record for January 17, 2019. Or after they had adjourned for the day, they filed into the record, which you can't do, right? Oath of office of the members, residents, and commissioners of the delegates. This is all supposed to have been done on the very first day of this, I think it's January 3rd, it's supposed to be done. So I don't know why they're putting it in here, right on the 17th, but it should have been done on the 3rd. And this is the oath of office of members, residents, commissioners, and delegates, right? The oath of office required by the 6th article of the Constitution. Well, we just read it. But it says, no, it's in 23 Stat 22. Well, that isn't what it says to do. To be administered by members and so forth and it's the text is in 5 U.S.C. 3331. Which is this oath? I state your name, say your stuff, so help me God. Well, it doesn't satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution because it has a religious test. So why aren't we taking an oath to satisfy the Constitution? Well, because the Constitution is suspended, obviously. And then when these people are taking this oath, they're not using their full legal name. I mean, this one, C.A. Dutch Rupsenberger. That would be like me saying I'm Bob A. Rob Ryder Retluski. That's the guy that took the oath. Right? That isn't working. This isn't their identification. Everybody has a full legal name. Sergeant Majors, everybody. And it's right here. Right? It's in the Real ID Act. So, Title 6, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 37, Real ID, Driver's License, and Identification Cards, in which it says the whole reason for doing this of this part apply to states and U.S. territories that choose to issue driver's licenses and identification cards that can be accepted by federal agencies for official purposes. Well, to do that, they have to do it using full legal names, which means an individual's first name, middle name, last name, or surname without use of initials or nicknames. Then why is it when I go to court, or somebody else goes to court and sends me their paperwork that shows the name of the judge or the name of the attorney or whomever, they're all in middle initial names? That isn't the individual's identity. And if they're not going to use their identity, then I'm not securing my person's papers, houses, and effects from unreasonable searches or seizures. They're just going to go ahead and take my property. I don't even know who they are. Well, yeah, but they got an oath of office. Their oath of office isn't valid. It doesn't convey to them any constitutional authority. They didn't take the one that's due by the Constitution. Okay, we'll move on here. Give me just a second. Okay, so it's safe to say that we don't have a Congress because we're not taking the proper oath of office. So all of these people that took this oath that's in 5 U.S.C. 3331 are not the Congress of the Constitution. And as we'll see, 5 U.S.C. 3331 is, all executive branch officers. It doesn't have anything to do with the Congress or the judiciary. We're supposed to have 3 co-equal branches of government. Right? But all this is being done under the Title 5, which is where all the agencies are. Right? It's not where the judiciary is. It's not where the Congress is. We just read where the Congress is. It's Title 2. They're not taking the oath. So none of these people are that officer. And here's the oath of office, right? 3331. You can read what it says. But then it says, this section does not affect other oaths required by law. Well, that would be this one. This one's required by law. This is the very first law passed by the first Congress after the ratification of the Constitution. And it's still in Title II that says this is the oath they're talking about. There's no other way to explain it. So then, what about the judicial branch? I showed this in my last video. Rosita had gotten these are from the Department of Justice, U.S. Department of Justice, right? Not United States, U.S. U.S. is a military abbreviation for the United States, but it's the military abbreviation for the United States. Right, where she had gotten all of the alleged certificates of commissions, I guess we should say, or commissions. for judicial officers, right? So here's one, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, somebody here, da-da-da, got some words, got the Attorney General signing, got Trump's scribble, and has a seal. And the seal is from the Department of Justice. It's not from the Department of State. Well, Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court said that the seal that you use is the seal of the, when they're talking about commissions for officers of the United States, they're talking about using the seal from the Secretary of State, which is the seal that's used by the Congress, which is kept with the Secretary of State. But this is the Department of Justice, so, who the hell are these people? Well, I can't tell if that's her full legal name, Amy Corney. I can't hardly read them. Can't read script. But I can look at some of these and say, well, that's a middle initial. John Kenneth, well, that could be his full legal name. Can't complain about that one. But I can this one, Donald C. Right? Can't use middle initials. That's not your full legal name. That's not the person that is going to be taking the office. It's an improper identification, as is Donald J. Trump, of course, because Donald J. Trump, the oath for the president, doesn't have in it anything to support the Constitution. It doesn't say support the Constitution. It doesn't use the word support. Go read it. Go read the 6th article. It says everybody's got to take an oath to support the Constitution, and they just showed where it is. The oath to support the Constitution is in 1 Stat 23. So the President of the United States would have to take the oath that's in the 2nd article and also the oath that's in 1 Stat 23, or he's not the President. And he can't do it as Donald J. Trump. It's not his full legal name. And I don't know if he's supposed to be doing this as the President of the United States of America or just President of the United States. Because United States of America, it could be the title of something, or it could be a describer of what United States you're talking about. So it's two proper nouns coupled with the coupling word, but not the title of something. Anyways, middle initial. Middle initial. Middle, I don't know what that is. That's a long-ass name. So these are people who are claiming to be judicial officers, judge of the District of Columbia, United States District Judge for the District of Columbia. Maybe that's how they're doing it, right? Because this looks like this guy's using his full legal name. I'd have to actually go through these and see who's using their full legal name and what office they were going to and da-da-da-da. I really don't have time to do that. But if you're interested in looking at these, because I did do something that everyone can see them, and I'm going to go show you where that is, but let me just go there and pause. If you follow me for any length of time, you know that I've opened some cases in the United States Court of Appeals for veterans' claims because I could, and I wanted to see, I'd put them in if they'd put them in. So one of these cases was actually a case I opened against the Supreme Court, and let me look. That would be this one. Robert Allen versus United States Supreme Court. It's like an appeal from Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, I don't know why they said that, but I put into this case correspondence from petitioner. It wasn't correspondence, actually. I can't help what they call it. I wanted to make it a public record. So I put into this case all of these commissions, and they put them in here for me. Along with the complaint that I put in. This is all the shit that I sent to the Supreme Court that hasn't done anything with it. Having to do with these counterfeit commissions. Because they're not commissions of judicial officers, they're going into Title V. They're not really taking the oath that's in Title 28. They're taking a combination oath that has the words in it. But they're not taking the oath that's in 28. They're taking, something that looks like it. Anyways, in here I put in all of these to look at. So if you want to download them, you can. You're more than welcome to. You would just go to case 193537. Robert Allen Vertluski versus U.S. Supreme Court. What else is in there? That's all that's in there so far. Okay. But that was just to show you these, to say, well, these really are not valid. What should be valid? How should it have been done? Well, that was determined in Marbury versus Madison, which is the Supreme Court case that is supposed to have set the precedents for judicial review. Well, it wasn't the only thing they talked about in Marbury versus Madison. They were talking about the whole reason for this is Marbury was supposed to become a justice of the peace in the District of Columbia, but he didn't get his commission that was put in by Madison from Jefferson's Secretary of State. Something like, oh, let's just read it. Right? So they open up a court case. Hey, I didn't get my commission. So what does that mean? And so what they came up to say was, well, the Supreme Court really couldn't rule because they had broadened, Congress had broadened the Judiciary Act outside of the scope of the Constitution. Excuse me for just a second. Okay, so what they had said was the President of the United States, who? President of the United States, not President of the United States of America, President of the United States, by signing the commission, appointed Mr. Marbury a Justice of the Peace, the County of Washington, and the District of Columbia, and the seal of the United States affixed thereto by the Secretary of State is conclusive testimony of the veracity of the signature and the completion of the appointment. Well, that's what it takes to do it. The President has to sign it, and the seal of the United States has to be put on it by the Secretary of State. And once it's signed, well, that's the testimony that it's been done. To enable the court to issue a mandamus to compel the delivery of the commission of a public office to the Secretary of State must show that exercise appellate jurisdiction, and it be necessary to enable them to exercise appellate jurisdiction. I had this highlighted for a different reason. I don't want to read all of those. Okay, so going on, the third section, which would be the third section of Article 2, that he shall commission all officers of the United States. An act of Congress directs the Secretary of State to keep the seal of the United States, to make out and record and affix the said seal to all civil commissions to officers of the United States to be appointed by the President. Right? So it needs to have the seal of the United States on it, and the seal that they're using is the seal of the Department of Justice. Now, where was I reading? Oh, hang on a second. I have too many things open. Okay, so continuing on in Marbury versus Madison, the distinction between the appointment and the commission will be rendered more apparent by the adverting to the provisions in the second section of the second article of the Constitution, second section, second article of the Constitution, which authorizes Congress to vest by law the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the President alone, in the courts of law, in the heads of departments, thus contemplating cases where the law may direct the President to commission an officer appointed by the courts or by heads of departments. Well, the courts aren't appointing anybody. All right, they're supposed to be a co-equal branch of government. How come they're not appointing people to have the President commission? Well, because we're not using that. We're not in that government. Although that clause of the Constitution requires the President to commission all officers of the United States may never have been applied to officers appointed otherwise than by himself, yet it would be difficult to deny the legislative power to apply it to such cases. In other words, the courts could appoint a judge and tell the President to give him a commission. It follows, too, from the existence of this distinction that if an appointment was to be evidenced by any public act other than the commission, the performance of such public act would create the officer. The signature is a warrant for affixing the Great Seal to the commission, and the Great Seal is only to be affixed to an instrument which is complete. It attests by the act supposed to be a public notary the veracity of the presidential signature. It is never to be affixed till the commission is signed, because the signature, which gives force and effect to the commission, is conclusive evidence that the appointment is made. The difference between appointment and commission. They're appointed with the signature and commissioned when the Great Seal goes on. The commission being signed is subsequent duty of the Secretary of State to subscribe by a law and not to be guided by the will of the President. He is to affix the seal of the United States to the commission and is to record it. Period. And that ain't happening. And so while, you could say that these people are judges, well, they're not judges in the judicial branch. They're judges in the executive branch. They're administrative judges. But they're not judicial. They're not taking the proper oath of office for a judicial officer. We'll see that more clearly in a second. But one last thing, if it should be supposed that the solemnity of affixing the seal is necessary not only to the validity of the commission, but even to the completion of the appointment, still, when the seal is affixed, the appointment is made and the commission is valid. Okay, I agree with that, but there's no seal of the United States on these pieces of paper. So these aren't the commissions they're talking about for officers of the United States under the Constitution. Now, they may be officers in a time of war when the Constitution's been suspended. And President Lincoln, when he declared martial law in 1683, it was in the District of Columbia. Right? Well, so now the president has to go to the District of Columbia and have a special proclamation or sign a peace treaty before martial law has been rescinded. And that's never happened. Not in the District of Columbia. You're going to have to go show it to me. Right? You got to show me it's been done properly. But until somebody can show the proclamation that the President of the United States, rescinded martial law, then it's been going on since 1863. And that's why there's gold fringed flags in the courtroom. It's an Army flag. It's governed by Army Regulation AR 840-10. And in Section 2, or Chapter 2, I believe it's done by chapters, it'll say in there that, flags with gold fringe fly in military courtrooms. They don't fly in a civilian courtroom. So there is no civil government. So we're under the fourth branch of government, and we should say, okay, well, forget these other fools. Let's go to the who's in charge and talk to them. Because them idiots on Capitol Hill aren't in charge of shit. They're the problem. It's an insurrection. They need to go. And so we're going to see if we can find a tool to make that happen. And I'm just saying now, after looking at it, I believe it to be this thing called the Fourth Estate. That's what they call themselves. And well, we're going to look at that just a second here. Did I cover everything I wanted to cover? Here's commissions. Okay, so again, this is out of Title V, right? Government organization. Commission of an officer. President may make out and deliver after adjournment of the Senate, a commission of an officer who is appointed, then confirmed by the Senate. And except as in these other sections, the Secretary of State shall make out, record, and affix the seal of the United States to the commission of an officer appointed by the President. The seal of the United States may not be affixed to the commission before the commission has been signed by the President. Well, that's what we were talking about. But it said C, and you get down here, it says the commissions of judicial officers and United States attorneys and marshals appointed by the President, by and with advice and consent of the Senate, and other commissions, which before August 8, 1888, were prepared at the Department of State on the requisition of the Attorney General, shall be made out and recorded in the Department of Justice under the seal of the Department and countersigned by the Attorney General. But that's for, before this date, prepared at the Secretary of State on requisition by the Attorney General. Those aren't the ones we're talking about. Not for officers that want to be judges in the Article 3 court. They would have been ones that were requisitioned by the President, right? Not another department, which can, if you go back and read those laws, a department can appoint people, right? It's all been worked out, but it isn't the one we're talking about for an appointment by the President. So for these to be valid as Article 3 judges, this has to be the seal of the United States. It can't be the seal of the Department of Justice. And this thing with this, right, Title V, here's the law that created it. If you just read the first part, government organizations and employees, right? Part 1, the agencies, generally. And it says they got executive departments, military departments, government corporation, independent establishment, executive agency. Well, what are the executive departments? Department of State, Treasury, Defense, Justice, Post Office, Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, Labor, Health, Education, Welfare. I don't see anything in there about Congress or the courts. Military departments. Well, we know who they are. Government corporation. Well, that isn't, the judiciary branch and the Congress, they're not government corporations, they are the government. My point is, this is all to do with under the executive branch. There's nothing in here about the Congress. There's nothing in here about the judiciary. So why are they taking an oath that comes out of this section of law? And one last interesting bit, right? And then we'll get on to the fourth estate, which is really why we're here. But this is just background stuff so we can all have some basis of where the hell Rob Ryder came up with this idea. So the Congressional Research Service makes all sorts of booklets for the Congress. And one of them is the appointment process of U.S. U.S. right? Not United States, U.S. the militarized United States circuit and district court nominations. An overview. And if you were to Google that, right, the appointment process for U.S. circuit and district court nominations, you would find this brochure online. And well, I don't care about most of it for now. The part that we want to look at is we get down where it's right, post-Senate appointment steps. President signs commission, the oath of office, and investiture. What page did I say? Page 41. Okay. 41, skip to the bottom, and let's see what they're supposed to do. I think page 41. Okay. 41. Post-Senate appointment steps. Upon notification of a nominee's confirmation, the President performs the next step in the appointment process of signing the nominee's commission. The commission is a formal document empowering the nominee to assume a judicial office, which the president must sign before the nominee may begin his or her duties. The date of the nominee's commission is the date of the president signs it, which usually occurs within a few days of Senate confirmation. It can occur with the same date of the confirmation itself. The confirmation or the commission is transmitted to the Department of Justice, which then sends it, as well as a packet of other documents, to the nominee. So the commission goes to the Department of Justice. Not the appointment to have a seal put on it to make the commission, but the commission. And it's not a commission until the United States seal has been put on it, according to Marbury versus Madison. Prior to that, it was a appointment. You've been appointed, do the paperwork, now you're commissioned. Right? So for it to be the commission, it would already had to have the seal of the United States and then had that sent to the Department of Justice. Well, that's not what they're doing, obviously. The appointment commission packet sent by the Department of Justice includes various forms to accompany the statutory oath of office, which each circuit and district judge must take before exercising the judicial authority of the United States. The oath of office is orally administered by someone legally authorized. Additionally, in some cases, the home state senator. Okay, the oath is a combination of the judicial oath of office required for every justice or judge of the United States and the general oath administered to all federal government officials. Right? So it isn't either of these, it's a combination of them. They didn't take these oaths, they made up their own. We'll see that in a second. At the time the oath is executed, the nominee himself or herself must also sign and date the commission. Okay, so now we have these commissions. They've been signed by the president. They've been signed by the attorney general, but where's the judge's signature? They're saying that had to happen. Now, they're getting this information from discussions under this, as well as the following heading, are prepared with the benefit of informal references, materials, and background information provided the Congressional Research Service by the Office of Legislative Affairs, Administrative Office of U.S. Courts. They're the ones saying this is how this happens, right? The Office of Legislative Affairs for the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts. So the Administrative Office of U.S. Courts is the one who's saying what has to be done. And they're saying it has to be signed. If two or more confirmed nominees, same date, seniors by the age, okay. This process, receipt of the package, administering the oaths, including obtaining his or her signature on the commission, typically occurs within a week or two of the Senate confirmation. In some cases, however, a nominee might wait longer for professional reasons to take the oath and sign his or her commission. Well, then they can't wield the power until they've done it. So where's the signed commission? By the judge. Ask the judge to see his signed commission. Okay, and then it goes down, it said here that in this footnote, the exact wording of the statutory oath of office is as follows, right? So this is how they're doing it. And they put it all together. I insert federal judge's name. So where's this oath of office at? Who's got it? Is that name there the same name that's on this commission? Right? Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will administer justice without respect to persons, do equal right to poor and rich, and will faithfully and impartially discharge, perform the duties incumbent upon me under the Constitution and laws of the United States, and I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, will bear true faith and allegiance. On and on. So help me God. So they just made up their own. They didn't take the one in 5 USC 3331, and they didn't take the judicial oath, which is found in 28 USC 453. And they didn't sign a commission. So these aren't judicial branch, right? The judicial branch now is what we're talking. So that would be a co-equal branch of government. No, that ain't what happened. So they're not judicial branch. These aren't commissions for judicial branch officers. They're commissions for administrative branch officers. Hey, they're administrative judges. They're not judicial. And so, that what you think of as you and I would think as the government appears to have been vacated. And it's all being run under Title V, which is Administrative Procedures Act comes under that, and so forth and so on. And, well, what else comes under that is the military. And the military, under the DoD, says they're the fourth branch of government. So let's get to that now. What can that mean for us? Let's go take a look. Hang on a second. Okay, so when I was trying to figure out how I was going to write to the Sergeant Major of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I said, well, let me go see if I can find an email address for him. So I went to the Joint Chiefs of Staff's website. Said, oh, they got an Inspector General's office. Let me go there. Went there, found out, okay, here's a form to fill out for the Inspector General's office. Clicked on it, and it took me to this site to find the form without getting into any more details. But it's called the Executive Service Directorate, which is actually a military website, right? It's esd.whs.mil. And it's like, well, what the hell is the Executive Service Directorate? So I Googled it, and I found under the Washington Headquarters Services, right? This is a MIL website, WHS MIL website. WHS is Washington Headquarters Services, MIL. It said, the Executive Services Directorate provides knowledge and management and visual information services across OSD, that would be the Office of Secretary of Defense, and the Fourth Estate. The ESD oversees legally mandated programs as well as providing executive services to the Secretary of Defense, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, the Office of Secretary of Defense components, the Joint Staff, and the Fourth Estate. So they're, doing stuff with the Fourth Estate. Well, what the hell was this Fourth Estate then? Well, I found this is from that same place, Washington Headquarters Services, Fourth Estate 101. Let's start at the beginning. Where it said that the outline is you got Department of Defense, you got the Constitution and National Defense, you got key statutory authorities, DoD structure, organization structure, right? The DoD structure, the Office of Secretary of Defense structure, the DoD Fourth Estate structure. Apparently, the DoD has a Fourth Estate. So what is the mission of the Department of Defense? Well, the mission of the Department of Defense is to protect the American people and advance our national interest. And that's in the mission and statement of the Department of Defense, QRD, February 2010. And then the Department of Defense shall maintain and use armed forces to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Ensure by timely and effective military action the security of the United States, its possessions, and areas of vital interest. Uphold and advance the national policies and interests of the United States. Well, that's pretty good, right? The Department of Defense is composed of the OSD, that's the Office of Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Joint Staff, offices of the IG, OID, the combat commands, military departments, Act of Congress authorizes and appropriates, makes use of governments of this under Article 1, makes rules for governance. So it made the National Security Act, Title 10, United States Code, which in Title 10 it says the president can just delegate all of his authority under that article, and now it's in the military's hands. They get to declare war, and they get to provide advice and consent, and the president gets to do his things, and so forth and so on. And then we have how it's broken down, where you have the Secretary of Defense and the Deputy, and then you got the Office of Secretary of Defense, which is separate from the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Joint Staff. And it goes on, right? So, I mean, all sorts of things that people like to get into the details. It's here to be had. They are providing lots of information about how stuff works in these websites. Now, where did it talk about the Fourth Estate? How is policy made? Let me just do this. Edit. Find. This reflects process for Title V, GS 15 and below for DoD is DoD component head for all Fourth Estate responsible for policy development. So for SES, SL, ST, DCMO is DoD component. It's like it's a separation, right? GS 15 and below, they're on one side, and the Fourth Estate is in the other side. Oh, DoD Fourth Estate. Well, here you go. Right? And you got the Secretary of Defense, Deputy Secretary of Defense, Undersecretary of Defense, Undersecretary, 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 DoD Chief Information Officer. That's good to know. DoD Deputy Chief Management Officer. So all of these other ones have Undersecretaries of Defense, but this one has a Chief Information Officer. I'm always looking for, the oddities to try to take advantage of, right? Which one has its own line? These are all going down through these USDs, but this one goes down, down, down. You got the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Director of Operations. So they have their own pipeline right up to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Then the DoD Inspector General sits off all by itself, and it's not attached to any of those. So I don't know, really if it's of any value to us because it's not attached to anything. Was that done on purpose? Oh, hang on just a second, please. Okay, so as I was saying, the DoD Inspector General, he's not tied to anything. Right? So if we send something to him, it's a black hole. As it turns out, the DoD Inspector General is a separate agency. It's like, well, how do I get to the Secretary of Defense through him if he's not tied to him, when all these other ones are tied to him? And then looking at all the different choices, it's like, well, here's the DoD General Counsel. Hey, he's tied to him. Well, what do we know about DoD General Counsel? That's off his website. So the Office of General Counsel is headed by the General Counsel of the Department of Defense, appointed by the President with advice and consent of the Senate. General Counsel is by law the Chief Legal Officer of the DoD. If you're the Chief Legal Officer or something, you're like the judge, right? You have final word on the law in the DoD. You're the judge of the law for the DoD. The General Counsel is responsible for the following functional areas. Provide advice to the Secretary, Deputy, on all legal matters, services performed within, involving the Department of Defense. Services performed within or involving the Department of Defense. Is it legal to do? Who decides? He does. Is it legal to use United States troops in the United States to quash the rebellion? Well, it's up to him to decide. All right, so it's like, well, I'm going to write this guy, which I already did, but that's the thing. It's like, hey, this is, this man is in the chain of command of the Secretary of Defense. Provide legal advice to the Office of Secretary of Defense, components, overseas, coordinate, establish, and maintain the central repository for all international agreements coordinated, negotiated, or concluded by DoD personnel. Well, international agreements are treaties. So sure enough, he's got the treaties and, what they mean to the Department of Defense. The General Counsel is dual-hatted as Director of the Defense Legal Services Agency, that's the DLSA, a DoD agency which provides legal advice, services to defense agencies. See, the guy's got two hats. This is him acting as an agent, and this is him acting as the government. General Counsel acting as government, Director acting as agent. We want to go to him, I'm saying, and his General Counsel hat. And I came off of his website, right, which is ogc.osd.mil, another military website. So I'm looking at this website, and sure enough, right, law of war. Come on now. Law of war. Okay, so let's just read this real quick. Official treaty documents related to the law of war. In addition to the DoD Law of War Manual, the following treaties and official treaty-related documents related to law of war may be useful to DoD personnel, including legal practitioners. Well, as I pointed out earlier, I am DoD personnel. I got a DoD ID number. Every veteran does. You're DoD personnel. We need to be taking advantage of this. See the other official documents related to the law of war in addition for additional information. For many years, the Department of State has published annual treaties in force, a listing of treaties and other international agreements enforced by the United States, like the Rourke Peace Pact, which says they have to defend members of historical societies, so forth and so on. The Red Cross, we're supposed to have an agreement. If you're a member of the Red Cross, you're supposed to be protected by the military. And to be a member of the Red Cross, you're just supposed to have to volunteer. All these things are written into treaties. The Red Cross is in the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention, that's in there. So all of these treaties that the United States is duty bound to follow are in the repository of the Department of Defense's Office of General Counsel in the fourth branch of government, right? This is where they keep their treaties, in the fourth branch of government. Well, what else was there? Other official documents related to by the war. So one thing is you can download a copy of the war manual. It's only 1,236 pages long, right? There it is. Get your own copy. I already have one, so I don't have to download it again. But this is under other official documents related to the law of war. First of all, get a copy. See the official treaty documents related, right? You click that, you go to the other page. Well, here's all the treaties that we just looked at. Yeah. And then they have this thing called the Department of State annually publishes a digest of United States practice in international law. The digest provided a historical record of the views the U.S. right, the military government in public and private international law. U.S. is a militarized version of the United States. Not the same as U.S. without the dots. U.S. That's how the military does it. And so you click on that and you go to this on this site on the Secretary of State's website, where it will talk about these volumes that cover in international law to provide the public with historical record of the views and practices of the government of the United States in public and private international law. So what is the government of the United States? It's the U.S. government, which is a military government. It's not a civil government. And if it's a military government, then it's all done through the executive branch or administrative branch, because the president is the commander-in-chief of the military. And until he declares martial law has been rescinded, well, we're still under martial law. So anyways, all this would be useful and handy. In fact, I went and looked at this first one. It's just amazing how God works. Let me see if I can pull this up again. Come on. Da, 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 da. I think I just went to the first one. So what kind of stuff is in here? I'm going to go under international law. Oh. Okay, hey, I decided I don't want to go look for that right now. There's just too many branches of things to look at. And what I want to focus on is this office right here, which is the Department of Defense Office of General Counsel, and the things that they are responsible for. And the documents that they're using, right? It's all on here. Please go take a look yourself and see what you think. One of the things I had found was Department of Defense instructions for identification cards required by the Geneva Convention. And it took you to this instructions, which I'm going to go into now, right? But I've kind of highlighted a couple, so I'm going to go to the ones I had already done, which was under ID cards. These two. And so basically, to be an American national, I'm just going to, kind of tell you where we're headed with this, is that if you remember about 3 months ago, I did some videos on the Red Cross. And the fact that as a volunteer, you should be a member of the Red Cross, and as a member of the Red Cross, you should be being protected by the military. But how do you get that done? And well, you get it done by reading what the Department of Defense says to do. Because in that time when I had done these videos on the Red Cross, go look at that real quick. Sorry, I'm trying to cover all the bases so that I can say, well, I've talked about all these things in this video. And there's just lots going on. What we want to do is get the Department of Defense to recognize us as American nationals. Well, if you were a volunteer and a member of the American National Red Cross, well, then you would be an American national in the United States, because the American National Red Cross is a federal corporation. And by definition, as a federal corporation, it is the United States. So if you're a member of that federal corporation, well, then you're in the United States. And if you're in the United States, you'd be protected by the Constitution. Because the Constitution has been suspended in the way that we normally think, but all these associations have taken over. And hey, I didn't make it up, man. I'm just reading what the stuff says, right? I'm not trying to create my own government. I'm trying to figure out what's already here. But these are the, is what it is. So, volunteer to be an American national, right? Watch that video. And that talks about, joining the American National Red Cross to be recognized as an American national by the government and then be protected by your government. Because right now they've taken our status from us as American nationals. Right? Like my birth record, I've shown in videos, it's never been, the record says, and it's certified by the court, that my birth record remains in the office of the clerk of the county. Well, if they have my record, that means the state never got it, and the United States doesn't know that I was ever born in the United States. They kept it in the record of the county. Crazy as that sounds. That's what's going on. But, so, I digress. Let's get back to this. So, what did I do with, it's so frustrating sometimes. Office of General Counsel, where are you? Well, there you are. Right? Write that down, ogc.osd.mil, and you'll come to this page, and, well, that's where it all starts. And so in here, under Law of War, I think practice documents, at the bottom, it said Department of Defense instructions, right? Instructions 1000.01. Well, that will get you to this one here, which is identification cards required by Geneva Convention. It talks about who might need them. And then it says, shall serve as Geneva Convention card for eligible personnel and shall be issued in accordance with Volume 1 DoD Manual 1000.13. Right? You would have an ID card that serves as your identification under the Geneva Convention. Well, I want one of those. Right? Who can have them? Shall be issued for purposes associated with this instruction and reference G, and shall not be issued solely to facilitate travel overseas based on installation access and other DoD business processes. So it's a different card. Right? DoD ID cards. Well, we want to get one. Right? Then you would be recognized by the Department of Defense as being an American national. And that has to be a good thing. How can that be bad? If you're in the United States, you want to be recognized by the DoD as being in the United States, and you're not you are not the belligerent. So, who can get them? Certain categories of persons protected by the Geneva Conventions. The staff of National Red Cross societies and that of other voluntary aid societies duly recognized and authorized by their governments, who may be employed on the same duties as personnel named in Article 24 of Reference D, are protected by the Geneva Conventions in accordance with Article 26 of Reference D. Well, I'm just going to say you're talking about me. They're going to have to say that I'm not. Because what is the staff of a voluntary aid society? It's the volunteers. And so in the act, in the video I show, well, there's these ways you could volunteer. You could give blood, you could give time, you could give money. Any one of those three methods makes you a member of the Red Cross. And you have to do it annually to keep your membership. But that would make you a member of the Red Cross. And if you're a member of the Red Cross, well then, by God, you should be able to get an ID card from the DoD that protects you by the Geneva Convention. Instead of you being seen as a belligerent when you go into court and an enemy of the state, no, you're protected because now they know who you are. It goes on to say, bear a distinctive red emblem, right? You're going to get an ID card with a red emblem of the Red Cross. And they will leave you alone. It won't be a state ID from Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, any of them places. No, it'll be from the frickin' Department of Defense. You're a protected individual. protected by international treaty. Okay, and so one of the other manuals, oh, why did I close that one that way? It's that one and that one. Okay. So this one here said that who gets them? Right, this is the one you get to from the website. Because if you just Google these numbers that they use, like this number whatever, and put it into Google, you'll find the link. It'll lead you to the link. They're not hard to find. There's all sorts of information. That's what I say. This is like the press. This is all the free information that isn't propaganda. No, this is how you get things done. You want to get a DoD ID card? Well, read the frickin' procedure and go ask for one. And it says DoD ID card shall serve as the Geneva Convention's card for eligible personnel, which we've already determined. If you're a member of the Red Cross, you are, and shall be issued in accordance with Volume 1 of DoD Manual 1000.13, reference G. See how they do that? Okay, well then you could just copy and paste that, and you'd end up looking at this other document. $1,013. And what did it show in here? Registration and enrollment. Is this one that had? I don't remember if this one I marked up or not. I really haven't had a chance to look at these that closely yet. I mean, that's what I spend the rest of the weekend doing. I'm just sharing what I know today, saying, dude, you want to go read this? Right? Especially if you're a veteran, because, hey, you're in the DoD. They can't say no. But what we're gonna do is convince them that we're supposed to be getting these cards, these DoD cards, that prove that you're in the Geneva Convention. And that is for everybody who volunteers by giving blood, giving time, or giving money to the American National Red Cross. Now, I show my other videos on the American National Red Cross. There is a defect in what they're doing. They're not, they don't have this agent, this particular advisory board put together that has basically all the members of the military as members of the board. Well, they don't have it. It's in the law that it's supposed to be there, but it isn't there. They're not utilizing it. So we can't go to the Red Cross to get to the Department of Defense to be protected, because the Red Cross is supposed to act like our intermediary. But we should be able to go to the Department of Defense and say, hey, I'm a member of the Red Cross. Here, right here's my receipt, something I did for the Red Cross, because they send you, if you've donated them $10 online, they'll send you a receipt. I'm going to show that to the DoD. Say, well, here's my receipt. I want to have my ID card. Because it's the DoD that issues the ID card, not the Red Cross. Very cool stuff. That's all I really know, right? This is where I am right now. I want to figure out, other than sending this guy complaints or sending complaints to the Office of Inspector General or to the Sergeant Major or to the Joint Chiefs of Staff Commander, General Dunford, right? Whatever way I can do it, I don't really care. As long as somebody sees the smoke and responds, I don't care how they see the smoke. I'm going to use the internet and hope my guardian angel somehow gets this to, people of goodwill on the inside saying, come on, guys, help us out a little bit, right? You need to make them courts with the administrative judges acting as judicial officers under Article 3, which they're not, because they don't have a proper commission. They're just pretending. Okay, well, if that's the way it is because we're under a military government, that's fine. Just tell them to quit persecuting the people. Because we've all been given this inferior status by the Selective Service Systems system of classifying people. Right? Now, that's only been since, I don't know, like the mid-70s. Before that, they had some other system. But they're always giving people a defect of some kind so that you're not in the United States, or you have a defect against your civil status, and they got to give you you're an invalid. They don't want you to have a permanent address. They do all sorts of shit to keep you from being seen. And in one of these documents, in fact, I'm going to go find it. Let me go find the document. It shows all the things that they will know about you, which will prove that you're in the United States with this ID card. Let me go find it. Okay, well, I couldn't find the one I was looking for where it showed all the different attributes they would ask for this card. But basically, a Geneva Convention identification card is the same style as they use for military ID cards. Right? It's just you're going to have one for the Red Cross instead of for the active duty military. If you follow this line of thinking that I'm talking about. Right? So that's where I'm headed. I mean, I can't speak for everybody what they're going to do, but I'm going to go look at this office really hard and figure out how to get an ID card. And also find out, well, how do I petition a legal petition, because that's what I have, a legal petition for the redress of grievances for violations of the Constitution. Because in the in the DoD Law of War Manual, look, that's the Bible for what we're under right now. If we're under military rule, well, that's the book, that's the law, the DoD Law of War Manual. That's what they're going to follow. And if they say you need to have an ID from the Department of Defense, well, then get one. And then they'll defend you. Right? That's what I believe. So I'm going to try. So if if you want to look at this closer yourselves, you're going to want to find this page again also. Besides the General Counsel, he's got his own site, of course, but there's all these other sites. And this one here, how come I got to it? Which is the Executive Service Directorate. So it's esd.whs.mil. They have these different directives. Oh. They had all the DoD forms. I guess that's what I was looking for. Right? All the forms are on here. And the thing about the government, right, you can take it from me. I've worked in the government for 14 years, basically. 8 years in the Army and 6 years in a nuclear power plant, which is run by the government. So, things are done with forms. And it doesn't really matter who you are. If you can get the form filled out, get the right boxes checked, get somebody's signature on it that has the authority to sign it, well, then you can have whatever the form allows you to have. And the DoD's got lots and lots of forms. So it's a matter of coming up here and doing a search on different forms and so forth to see what there might be available to us to use. I'm just saying that all these forms and so forth and all sorts of information on these different directives, right, which is like those manuals we were just reading. Those are directives from the DoD. All start from here. Right, so for those who like to search for records, this is a wonderful place to search from. And I'm trying to use it. Right, I'm going to search as little as I need to find a way to use it and then put it to use. And I've already found my first way. Contact this guy and tell him I want to have a DoD ID card. Right? Can you help me out? I don't have to read all the law. I just need to know it exists and say, well, you do it. I'm here to get my ID card. Because technically we're the fourth branch of government, right? We, the people, are going to go tell the Department of Defense to defend us, and hey, the problem's over here, and quit paying attention to them people that pretend to be in the Congress because they're not. They didn't take a proper oath of office. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it there. There's more I could cover, but it's already a lot, and I'm kind of rambling right now anyways. I want to go do some more things, and I'll come back and we'll tighten it up a bit. So, but do go to this website, Department of Defense, Office of the General Counsel, which is ogc.osd.mil, and go under Law, War, Practice, Documents, Department of Defense instructions on how to get an ID card. That's a good place to start, but there's all sorts of other things you could read while you're here. But this is the fourth estate speaking, right? And the other three estates apparently have been abandoned. So we're dealing with the fourth estate. So don't run from it, run towards it. That's what I'm saying. Okay, y'all have a great day. Oh, hey, one last thing before I go. If you can, please donate. Right, take a minute now because I got to pay my rent in just about 10 days, and truly, I don't have any money. I need your help. Thank you. See you now. Bye-bye.